It's been a bit since we had Matt on the show. He, of course, is a national NFL writer for Sports Illustrated. I wanted to start a little bit with just how the Chiefs are playing, and then we can move on from there, because you actually did have a story up, and it mentioned Patrick Mahomes and his turnovers and the fumble that occurred on Sunday. What do you make of the struggles that we've seen from the Chiefs, in particular what we saw on Sunday?
Yeah, I went back and I watched all 22 of it, mostly to spare the rest of Kansas City. And, I do the piece every week where I kind of run down 3 plays around the league that all were kind of instructive. Excuse me. And so one of them was Mahomes' fumble. And the reason I went back and I looked at that play was because if you watch it, he holds the ball for a while. And then he kind of tries to climb the pocket. He gets strip sacked. Of course, he turn the ball over. And if you watch, Sky Moore is isolated on the backside of a 3-by-1. He comes open. He actually beat Patrick Surtain, believe it or not, on this in cut, and he's wide open. And at least in the film, I'm not Patrick Mahomes, but it looks like he looks at him, and there's like a moment of hesitation, like, do I want to throw this ball? And then he doesn't do it. And the reason I say that is if you watch the tape, there's a lot of plays like that. And it's not just Sky Moore. It's not. I'm not saying it's everybody. But there's a lot of plays where it's almost you wonder, and you're not in the room. Are guys running at the right depth? Are the route combinations the way they should be? Is this a question of Mahomes in his own mind thinking to himself, "Can I trust this guy?" My guess is it's a combination of all those things to some degree. But that tape on Sunday, listen, I don't think I'm going to shock anybody. That tape was a horror show. I mean, they looked like they had no interest in being there. Maybe part of that was Mahomes not feeling well, but they really they couldn't have played any worse than they did.
What's funny about them, though, Matt, is now that we know the Chiefs as well as we do, it doesn't here, at least for the two of us, send us into any panic at all. I don't know that there's a better team in the NFL at avoiding this one game turning into 3 out of 4, 3 in a row, like San Francisco's going through right now.
Right.
I just assume the Chiefs will play way better against Miami.
Yeah, it's funny. Right after the game, I went on a podcast, the RNI podcast, and they asked me about some different things. I said, I've never, like, as weird as it sounds, I'm oddly very confident the Chiefs are going to beat Miami this weekend. Like, very confident, because I feel like you're right. Like, we saw them do this last year in that Colts game. And that game was every bit the disaster that this Denver game was. And then they went to Tampa, where they were actually an underdog in the game, and ran the ball down Tampa's throat for 4 straight quarters. And I wonder if we're going to see a very similar type of style of game this week, where the Chiefs basically say, look, we're going to simplify the game. We're going to run the ball more, because Pacheco got 8 carries in the loss to Detroit, and he had 8 carries in the loss to Denver. Every other game this year, he's gotten double-digit carries of 6-0. I think you'll see more for him. I think you're going to start seeing more 2 tight end sets. I think they are going to say, look, if this isn't working, then it's not working. We've got to fix it. Now, they also have a bye week after this Miami game, so I think there's going to be far more introspection even then. But, yeah, the Chiefs, if you look at just about any book in America, they're the Super Bowl favorites. I mean, I don't think, as bad as that game was in Denver, you can't throw out the first 7 weeks of the year and just say, well, this is who they are. Well, that's not who they are. They're going to win 12, 13, 14 games. I mean, it's who they've been for years. And as bad as the passing game has looked at times, they're third in the league in passing yardage. I mean, their biggest problem is they can't stop turning the ball over. They've only had one game this year where they haven't had a turnover, and that was against Minnesota. That's the problem that they've got to correct far more than anything in the passing game.
And Matt, yesterday, a lot of people around Kansas City were hoping and believing that they needed to go out and make a trade. We know they didn't do anything. They didn't even trade away Richie James. Right. There was some reports that maybe that was going to be in play. And I think none of us, at least in this room, were surprised they didn't make a move based off of their cap situation. And also, look around the league, man. Only one wide receiver got traded yesterday. It was Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, I had talked to somebody pretty much right after the Hardman trade, with the Chiefs, and tried to get an understanding of the mindset. Is this the first of a few moves? Is this the only move? And the response is essentially, look, you never know what's going to happen, but this might be it. I mean, and the reality is the Chiefs don't have a lot of cap space. They don't have their full complement of picks next year. And this team is built in a way that they are relying on what is right now, you can make a really strong argument, a top 3 defense in football, and a quarterback who's great. I mean, the Chiefs basically look at this team right now and go, all right, listen, we know the receivers are a problem. We understand that. And I would expect next year MVS is not going to be there. I don't know that Sky Moore is going to be there. We'll see about some of these other guys. But I think if you're the Chiefs, you know it, you're aware of it, but they were never going to go out and do some Madden trade for Terry McLaurin. That was never happening. This isn't fantasy land as much as I think sometimes fans would love it to be. Like, they're not. If they were going to do anything yesterday, it was going to be a smaller. Hey, look, man, we're going to try to bring in a Darnell Mooney. We're going to try to bring in a guy who's maybe got a real low salary. But even then, they would have had to give up more picks. So if they had gotten a trade for Richie James, then maybe they would have. Maybe they would have taken that pick and flipped it. But they couldn't. They didn't. And the result is they have a team that they have figured out. They've got a couple of months for the playoffs, which we all know they're going to be in. And, what do they look like by the time New Year rolls around?
I want to ask you inside their own division in just a minute on the Raiders, Matt, but the Falcons just made a change at quarterback as well. And I think it's fascinating more so than even the Raiders because we get that. The Falcons are technically in first place in their division right now, and even they're saying Ritter's not the guy. One, that's just super not common, as you well know, but is Taylor Heineke a massive upgrade over Ritter?
He's better than Ritter. I don't know I'd say he's massive, but he's at least a definitive upgrade. Ritter has done nothing this year to show that he can play a position at a high level. And so Heineke, well, he's also never been a guy that you look at and go, hey, MVP candidate. Like, he's capable. He's been in a playoff game. He actually played okay in that game. I think if you're Atlanta, look, let's face it. This is the third year with Arthur Smith. They don't win this division, he's probably gone. Like, you've got to win this division. Carolina's a tire fire, and Tampa Bay's not any good. And New Orleans is probably the more talented team, but they can't ever really seem to get going. Part of that might be Dennis Allen. Part of that's Carr. But, yeah, I think if you're Atlanta, you got to win. For the Raiders, it's funny, actually. On Monday night, I was assigned that game for Sports Illustrated, and I was talking to my editor throughout the game. I said, look, I want to write a column. They really should just fire McDaniels and bench Garoppolo because this is going nowhere. And then we both kind of laughed. We're like, well, yeah, it's probably like a little too early to write that column. Well, as it turns out, should have wrote the column.
Well, now you can write the column about him being fired.
Yeah, he got fired and Garoppolo got benched, and here we are. So I should trust my instincts. But the point is with the Raiders, look, this has been a cycle for 20 years. This is what they do. In fact, it's really been a cycle for about 30 years. I mean, this is what they do. They hire guys. They profess he's the answer. It's clearly not the answer within like a month of the hiring. The quarterback is just a disaster other than Gannon, they've not had a quarterback that you've looked at and thought he is an upper echelon guy for 30 years. Carr had moments, but they're in a spot now you do wonder after the season, do they just trade Max Crosby? Do they trade Devonta Adams? Do they just completely tear this thing down to the studs and get picks? Because, frankly, that's probably what they ought to do.
Were you surprised at the timing of it? I know you were going to writing a column, or we're going to write a column Monday night, but that the GM firing came after the trade deadline. I think some people are like, well, why wouldn't you do it before and then trade guys? Or do you think that was the final straw that, hey, maybe there was some directive from ownership that, hey, you need to either not, you need to make some moves and they didn't? What do you think the timing was there?
I don't know if it had anything to do with the deadline. I just think it had to do with that they were so embarrassing in Detroit. And you started to see with Adams the frustration. Jacobs talking about, hey, man, it's not my job to fix the offense. And look, I mean, ultimately, we didn't write the column because we didn't think the timing was right. And so, obviously, I was a little bit surprised. I wasn't surprised in the sense that, this was inevitable. They had to move on. But I did think, the 3-5, they might wait to get the Giants this weekend. If you probably get the 4-5 and kind of figure it out. But my big thing with the Raiders now is whoever comes in as the GM, whoever comes in as the next coach, and Jim Harbaugh is going to be a name everybody hears, but Jim Harbaugh is going to have more than a few offers in the NFL. So the Raiders are going to have to entice him in a way another team doesn't. The Bears, who he played for, you look at and go, they're going to come calling. Okay, I don't think that's any big secret. If you're the Raiders, what do you do with this current roster? Like I just mentioned, you have Adams, you have Crosby. Jacobs is a free agent after this year. I can't imagine they're giving him a huge money deal after the season he's having. do you sit there and say, you know what, we need as much young draft capital, young players from that draft capital that we can get? Do you trade Adams for a 1 and a 2? Do you trade Crosby for a 1 and a 3? Maybe even one of those guys next to 2 first for the right team. Like, I think you probably do. I mean, by the time they're a contending team, Devonta Adams is going to be 57 years old at this rate. Like,
Yeah.
you need to get better with young guys, and those are the only 2 pieces they have. They're not trading anybody else who's going to bring back any kind of return.
So McDaniels is out. Like, who's the next coach that should be worried right now? If there's another in-season firing.
I mean, Rivera seems like the guy that might be on the hot seat in the sense Washington clearly, under new ownership, and first of all, anytime there's new ownership, you always kind of raise an eyebrow and pay attention to that because Josh Harris had nothing to do with hiring Ron Rivera. I'm looking there and saying, okay, this might be where they just say, we're moving on. And maybe part of that is because they want to give Eric Bieniemy an interim look. Hey, you know what? Here's 4 games. Here's 6 games. Show me what you look like as a head coach. Let's see it. I mean, I think that makes a ton of sense. As far as I know, a lot of people are going to look at the Chargers. I just think the Chargers are going to give her to Staley after the season. But the Chargers have historically been a team. They kind of just wait it out. They usually don't do that in the middle of the year. So I think Staley's gone. I just think it's going to happen tomorrow. I think Rivera, of all the guys, Eberflus is another one, but the Bears are such a conservative ownership group. I think they'll probably wait to the end of the year. I could see Washington moving on to try to make a statement to their fans while giving Bieniemy a shot to kind of show what he can do.
Speaking of Matt Verderame, NFL staff writer for Sports Illustrated, I want to ask you about Miami at least. I feel like there's still kind of a mixed opinion on Miami in the NFL community. Nobody's doubting that they can score and that Tyreek Hill is incredible. But this stat of them not beating a winning team since early last year keeps coming up. People who seriously question their defensive ability. How good do you think Miami is as it relates to the Chiefs?
I think they're good. And I think they're very dangerous. I don't think they're as good as Kansas City. The problem I think Miami has and runs into against good teams is good teams this year, and by those I mean Buffalo and Philadelphia, who have been the teams they've played. They haven't just beaten the Dolphins; they've beat them up. I mean, they have physically just taken it to the Dolphins in these games. Kansas City, I would imagine, especially on the defensive front, that is going to be the game plan here. It is going to be a look. Do whatever you possibly can to limit Tyreek Hill, which of course is a tall order, and then just physically get downhill and get after that offensive line, which has been beat up, get after Tua. The Dolphins have been incredible offensively at times this year. They've also had games where they've really kind of struggled through it. I mean, not even just the loss. There have been times, the Giants game, they ended up scoring their points, but they had a lot of turnovers. Even in this past week, they had multiple turnovers, but New England just couldn't do anything, kept giving the ball back to them. I think in the end, if Miami's going to win this game, they're going to have to do something defensively with Kelsey, and I think to slow Pacheco down, because I think in this game, Pacheco's going to be a huge factor. If Miami can turn this into, hey, you're going to have to throw against Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey and Javon Holland, then I think all of a sudden the advantage swings to the Dolphins. But if Kansas City can kind of play the game in the middle of the field, they can play at the line of scrimmage, the Chiefs are just, they're better there. They're better on both sides of the ball in the trenches. That's where Kansas City, I think, has a big advantage. It's where Philly beat them. It's where Buffalo beat them. And I think the Chiefs are going to try to replicate that.
Matt Verderame, NFL staff writer for Sports Illustrated. Great to have you on the show again, man. Appreciate the insight.
No problem.